Genesis 10. This weekend, over 1,500 players will gather in San Jose, California for the 10th installment of this iconic tournament series. In the 5 years of Ultimate's lifetime, Genesis has always had a central role in defining the stories and players that shape the competitive landscape, from Genesis 6, which was the game's first premier event, all the way to the present day. Though events like Umebura, Kulon, and Luminosity Makes Big Moves have given us a taste of what's to come in 2024, Genesis is looking to be the event that establishes how the arc of 2024 will bend, the beginning of the year's storylines, the origin, the source, there's gotta be another word for that, right? Hey guys, this is SDG, and today we're looking at the projected bracket for this event to see who might win it all and who might fall sooner than anticipated. But if there's anything that this event has shown us in the past, it's this. Here are the top 128 seeds of Genesis 10. With top representatives from more than 10 countries, it's clear that the attendees list this year is one of the most stacked we've ever seen, with strong players arriving in droves not just from North America, but Japan and Europe all flocking to this event. With the talent pool this deep, it's a bit difficult to make any predictions for certain, but this is the projected bracket for the top 64 at Genesis 10. These boxes represent the lifetime head-to-heads for every projected match in winner's bracket at ranked offline events. Green is for the higher seed and red for the lower seed, so where you see a red box higher than a green one, keep an eye out for an upset. As you can see, there's a good mix of matchups here, with some having a long history like Tweak vs Gluto and Ken vs T, while others have never been seen before, like Spargo vs Bloom Forever, Ashimo vs Lima, and MKLeo vs Neo. Based on head-to-heads, it seems like the most expected upset should be Kuramo over Shuton, Cole over Glutony, and Zackray over Debuzz. But the thing about looking at lifetime records is that they can obfuscate recent trends. If we instead look at head-to-heads just from 2023 onwards, we see that Glutony over Tweak is in fact the most likely upset, with Europe's number one having taken 5 of the past 6 sets against the second best player in NA. This isn't the only story that changes under a different light. Mito's and Meister's record goes from slightly Meister bias to 2-0 in Mute's favor, while matchups with a ton of history like Riddles vs Light and Debuzz vs Zackray reveal that they've yet to have a new entry for over a year. Genesis 10 might be the place where we finally see this history continued. Now let's take a look at the brackets of individual players, starting, appropriately I think, with the Horsemen. Of the 4 players who have established themselves as the most dominant forces in the game during the past year, that is, the 4 Horsemen, only 3 are in attendance. Eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed the absence of a key player from this event. The Lumiranked number 1 player for 2023, Akola, the best Steve main on the planet, and the only Horseman spending next weekend outside of California. Akola's number 1 spot last year was earned primarily through consistently strong showings, even at events where other Horsemen faltered. But given his somewhat shaky record against other members of the top 4 and his absence at what's likely to be one of the 3rd largest events of the year, Genesis 10 is a prime opportunity for one of the other Horsemen to build their case for number 1 in the new year. We start with the first seed Sonics, who comes into this event off of not just a strong 2nd place finish at LMBM, but is also the most recent of the Horsemen to have won a Premier Tier event. Sonics has repeatedly proven himself to be one of the most consistent forces in the modern meta, losing to only 12 unique players since the start of 2023. But while his first seed is definitely warranted, his victory is far from assured. Risks pop up as far back as Winners Top 128, the last match of round 2 pools. If JDV upsets Shu, Sonics will play against a Pac-Man main who knows how to camp, which was famously the method DD used to eliminate him at SmashCon 2023. Playing against a hero main in the next round, whether it be Akakiksu or Beast Mode Paul, is always somewhat of a dice roll. And then the round after that, Sonics likely faces either Debuzz, who's taken sets off him in the past, or Zackray, who has a ton of experience and a winning record against Ken, the best Sonics in Japan, and will likely opt to play Pit, a matchup Sonics has never had to face at this level. Shuton or MKLeo to make Winners Top 8 is also somewhat risky. Although Sonics was dominant against both these players last year, they've both taken sets off him before. Should he make Winners Side Top 8, however, I expect it to be somewhat smooth sailing. For reasons that will become clear, it's likely that instead of Tweak, the player who double eliminated him at LMBM 2024, he'll face Glutony in Winners Semis, and then with either Maya or Spargo as his projected opponent in Winners Finals, Sonics has good odds at defeating them and securing a place in Winners Side Grands, having won 3 of the last 4 sets against both players. Truthfully, I expect Sonics to push through the resistance he faces in this bracket and establish himself as a strong contender to take the crown, but the potential for an early dip into losers bracket is too strong to flat out ignore. With second seed Mia, we see a lighter bracket than Sonics in terms of players and character matchups, but there are still some threats to watch out for. Mia dropped a set to Japan's best Palomanga Gaima last year, although he won in both of their subsequent encounters. Nevertheless, seeing Rafflo in Winners Top 64 could have him sweating a bit. A potential Game & Watch Ditto in Winners Top 32 could also be problematic, as Dittos in this game tend to be very volatile regardless of who's favored going in. But as for the other potential opponents before top 8, Midas, Light, and Riddles, Mia is heavily favored with strong records against each of them. The biggest worry for Mia should be his Winners semifinal opponent, Spargo, who Mia has never taken a set off. Unless Mia pulls out some new tricks or Spargo is defeated beforehand, his Genesis run might face a hard wall, because if he loses to Spargo in semifinals, he'll be required to defeat him if he wants to win the event from losers. But Spargo's early defeat seems unlikely, as of the 3 top seeds, I say he has the easiest bracket. He has a winning record on both Ashimo and Lima, making it likely that he'd win against both Iken and Bloom Forever as well, and he's up 3-0 on MK Big Boss in the last year. As I see it, there are 2 main threats to his bracket. First is his winner's quarterfinal set against Ken or T, where he's gone close with Ken on numerous occasions, even dropping a set to him at Port Priority 8 last year, as well as dropping 2 sets to Riddle's Kazuya, providing a template for T to follow if they face off. Second is that in the event that Spargo faces Light rather than Mia in Winners semifinals, he could be in trouble, as their record is 3-2 in Light's favor since 2023. However, Spargo did win their set at LMBM. Maybe he's finally figured the Foxmane out? Lastly, the other player Spargo really wants to avoid is Tweak, who beat him 3 out of 4 times the 2 faced off in 2023. If I were Spargo though, I wouldn't be too worried about facing Tweak.
I'm gonna say this. So, I think it is extremely impressive that I got seeded 4th, virtually like winning the tournament, and somehow I don't have one favorable situation in the whole bracket. That is impressive.
Even disregarding Tweak's historically hard time at Genesis, of all the top 4 seeds, Tweak's bracket is by far the harshest. To start with, Tweak plays Goblin to get out of round 2 pools, and though they haven't played in more than 2 years, Goblin is 3-0 on Tweak lifetime. Onin next is another serious obstacle. Tweak is 0-1 on Onin and seems to struggle against Steve in general, dropping 3 sets to Syrup last year and down big lifetime against Akola. Should he make it past that, he faces Yaura or Shattuck, 2 harsh matchups that Tweak's Diddy Kong struggles against, having dropped sets last year to Samus main Siski and Corrin main Neo. Lastly, to make it to Winners Top 8, he'd have to face some of his greatest demons in the current meta. Either Zomba, who he went 0-3 against in 2023, or more likely Gluttony, who he did beat a single time last year, at the cost of losing the other 5 sets. The tragic thing is that if Tweak can get into Winners semis, he has a good record against most of the top seeds in his path. But to get there, he'll either need to hope for some fortuitous upsets in his favor, or finally figure something out in several of the toughest matchups he's faced in recent memory. Though 5th seed Gluttony has historically done well at Genesis, the bracket is full of uncertain variables that could put his run this year in jeopardy. Vendetta upsetting Send or Taikei upsetting Cola could spell disaster, as Ken and Sonic are both 2 of Wario's most difficult matchups. Meeting Yaura instead of Tweak in Winners quarters could also be disastrous, as though Gluto went positive on Siski in 2023, he still dropped 2 sets to Europe's strongest Samus. Even if things go as seeded, Zomba and Cola could also both be problematic. Cola holds the lifetime record against Gluto, while Zomba has shown himself capable of defeating players of Gluto's caliber. In my opinion, Gluto is still favored against both these opponents. His real problem is his Winners semis match, where he's set to face either Sonics or Shuton, 2 players he's never before defeated. I'd give Gluto great odds of making top 8 at this event, but with such an obstacle in the Winners semis, winning it seems a bit further from reach. Some may be surprised to see Sonic main Ken as the 2nd highest Japanese seed in this event, but Ken has been ultra consistent for about half a year now, only missing top 8 at 2 of his last 10 majors. This bracket is one of the rougher ones in the top 8 though, with Ken having losing records on Apollo Kage, T, and Spargo. Ashimo could also be problematic, as Ken lost their last set at Kulon 9. I wouldn't count Ken out though. His last year has been full of examples of him overcoming players he struggled against, like Zomba, Light, Harrow, and even Spargo. So while I think it's probable he gets upset early, I'd say he still has a decent shot to make it through. For 7th seed Light, a lot of his run will be determined by how his bracket shapes out. Riddles in Winners Top 32 is a huge threat, with a winning record on Light lifetime, and one that he might not be prepared for since the 2 haven't faced off since 2022. Mia in Winners quarterfinals is another huge roadblock, the best pilot of one of Fox's worst matchups. Midas could also be problematic, as Mute famously defeated Light at last year's Genesis. However, Light actually won their other 3 sets in 2023, meaning I'd favor him going into this match. Although, for Mia to make it to Winners quarters, it would likely mean he's previously defeated Mia, which could very well be an indication that he'd be back in top form. Light is another case where if he can break into winner's side top 8, he has good odds against the projected opponents, so the struggle will be navigating the potential pitfalls on his path to victory. With the last of the top seeds, Shuton, we find an interesting scenario. Shuton's bracket has two major problems. First, to get out of round 2 pools, he likely plays Big Chungus, one of the best Steve players from Europe. Shuton has a spotty record with Steve as late, losing versus Steve to Mia and Yamanaction in a couple sets that were not particularly close. More pressing, though, is the presence of Kurama in his first set of top 64. Though the two haven't played since 2022, Kurama has won their last 3 sets, and Shuton hasn't really been given the opportunity to demonstrate an improvement in the Mario matchup. If he makes it past there, he'll need to watch out for Tweak and Mia, but has decent to great odds against most of the other potential opponents. It really comes down to the early stages of the tournament here. With that, we've covered the bracket path of all the top 8 seeds, but there are many more players with notable brackets or significant storylines coming into this event. So let's get the obvious one out of the way. MKLeo has won 3 out of 4 Genesis tournaments held in Ultimate, and at the one he didn't win, he got second. His consistency at this event is out of this world. Even last year, during his roughest year in Alt, where he only won a single major, he made sure it was this one. But although MKLeo isn't called Mr. Genesis without reason, the bracket he has lined up at this event is bar none one of the hardest he's ever gotten. His words, not mine. MKLeo's Odyssey starts with Chave in round 2, who plays both Terry and Kazuya, a character combination that should be familiar to him, as Riddles defeated him 3 times in 2023 using these characters. Next he faces either Justice, the Minmin who almost defeated him at Genesis 9 last year, or Jackal, the wolf who did defeat him at Crown the 3rd. After that, he plays either Ouch, who brought him to last hit at Battle with BC5, or Neo, who threatens to defeat him with the same character Shattuck did at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami. If that weren't enough, MKLeo's top 32 opponents are set to be his big run killers, Shuton or Kurama. MKLeo has never taken a game off Shuton in Ultimate. Not a set, a game. Counting their sets at the Prime Saga pre-local, Shuton is 9-0 in games against Leo. Kurama, on the other hand, is the best rep of a character Leo's been struggling with for months, Mario, and on top of that, he won their most recent set. Past this point, Stonix, Gluttony, Tweak, and Spargo are all players who've given Leo trouble as of late. For Mr. Genesis to get a 4-peat victory, he'd need to overcome some heavy odds. But if there's one thing that will make or break this run, I'd say it's definitely the first set of top 64 against Neo or Ouch. See, because of how Genesis brackets are constructed, the losers of each pair of matches go into the same part of losers brackets. So if Neo gets the upset on Leo, he winds up in the path of either Shuton or Kurama anyways, potentially setting him up for a 25th place. If instead Leo loses as projected in Winner's Top 32, his expected losers bracket to top 8 is much more doable, although he could still face problems against players like Umeki and Ken. Does Leo have the worst winners bracket at Genesis? Potentially. If you said yes, I'd understand where you're coming from. But for my money, I might give that dubious honor to last year's Genesis runner-up, Mutes. His run at Genesis 9 was the stuff of legends, overcoming not just the double Game & Watch nightmare matchup of Monty and Demeister, but Gluttony, Akola, Light, and MKLeo on top of that. This year, the seeding gods clearly saw that performance and said, well, do it again. As for the second year in a row, Mutes has double Game & Watch in his Genesis bracket. But while his head-to-head in the last year against Meister is actually favorable, Mia is an altogether different story. Mia's undefeated versus Mutes, and 4-0 since 2023 on the best Paisy player in Japan, Umeki. So needless to say, Mutes is going to need to make some magic happen to repeat his performance from January of last year. Genesis has shown the spotlight on plenty of players across its long history, but of those many, perhaps few are more lauded in the current day than Zach Ray. A fan favorite in both hemispheres, known currently for his low but impactful tournament attendance, Zach Ray is making Genesis 10 his first appearance in North America since the Ludwig Smash Invitational in October of 2022. This will be his first event on American soil in 15 months, and his first time using his new main Pit against many of the West's top threats. And while his bracket is somewhat of a mixed bag, I generally think it shakes out in his favor. Zach Ray's rolled Snake Eyes to get out of round 2 pools, with both MVD and Protoss threatening to put an early stop to his run like Shogun did at Wave 4 last year. However, Zach Ray's looked better in the Snake matchup as of late, defeating both Hurt and Dio at Kagurabi 11. Dabuz and Zach Ray haven't faced off since Smash Summit 3, where Zach Ray 3-0'd Dabuz's Min with Rob. Their match here would more than likely be with different characters, making this one a bit of a toss-up, but Zach Ray has the winning record lifetime. Against Sonics in Winner's Top 32, Zach Ray has plenty of experience against Ken with both Pit and Rob that he could bring to bear against the event's top seed. But win or lose, if Zach Ray makes it to Winner's Top 32, he has good odds at winding up one set away from facing his pre-quarantine rival, MKLeo. If there's any entity that can hear me and affect its will and reality, then please, make it happen. Just this once. Though he often goes overshadowed by his Detonation teammate, Brawl vet Neotono is returning from an even longer absence in North America, with his last time on American soil being Frostbite in February of 2020. Neotono has pivoted since then from a Pichu main to a Diddy Kong player with a hero secondary, but he's still a dangerous opponent to face, with 2 major top 8s in 2023 and a Yaman Action win this year at Umebura SP10. I'd give him good odds to upset his projected opponent in round 2 pools, Raflo, as the French Palo main dropped a set to Rivers Diddy Kong at SmashCon last year. Mia the round afterwards is a different prospect altogether, with Diddy Kong being one of Mia's most practiced matchups offline against Kansai, Diddy, Ryuo. Neotono's greatest impact on this event might have to come in the form of a loser's run, where he might face opponents like Tilde, Meister, Taike, or DeBuzz. Another fan favorite with low attendance last year is Cola, who took a several-month break from tournaments in between Battle of BC and LMMM. His bracket here is pretty decent, though, with his top 128 opponent, Taike, having a rough record against Roy players like Alice in Japan, and with historically good matchups against Gluttony and Zomba, I wouldn't be shocked to see him make a strong winner's run at Genesis. But at the same time, he's seeded into so many of the strongest players of 2023 that it's hard to call his bracket anything more than doable. Where Cola has the will, though, he's historically found the way. Now let's look at a couple of North American players with notably strong brackets. First up is Kurama, who is one of his best brackets in ages. Hero to make it out of round 2 pools is a little scary, but on paper Bowser is combo food for the master of the Mario Death Ladder, and as previously discussed, Kurama has great odds against both Shuton and MKLeo. His greatest challenge will be Sonics or DeBuzz to make winners top 8, both of whom have had especially dominant showings against Kurama in the past, with him even attempting to try secondaries like Roy and Corrin against them to no avail. Next up is the best Steve in NA and Michigan's Hope, Onen, who has a fantastic bracket in front of him. Onen has a winning record on both Tarek and Tweak, as well as Samik's experience for Yaura in the form of 5 wins on Iciness last year. And not only was Gluttony one of their wins in their famous run to first place at SmashCon 2022, but the Wario main recently dropped a set to Hidden Boss Steve main Carmelo on his much-anticipated trip to Japan last month. The bracket is set up nicely for Onen to make a run to winner's side top 8, where, though I'd expect he'd have a harder time against the top seeds he'd run into there, he at least has a shot of starting off his 2024 with one of his best majors in months. And I also want to check out Void, who surprised many early this year with a strong 17th place finish at Umebura SP10. Void drew Zomba to get out of round 2 pools, which is one of the better outcomes for him. Though Zomba has historically found a lot of success against players like WebJP, Sheik is one of Rob's toughest matchups, so an upset here is definitely within reason. Kananabe or Tilde the round afterwards is more of an ask for sure, but if Void can make it all the way to Gluttony, then I'd say he has a decent shot of beating him as well, as Glut has gone Game 5 with 2 different Sheik mains in the past year. Now let's get into a bit of a lightning round. Non-NA players attending their first event overseas. We're cheating a little with this first one, as Bloom Forever was present at both Watch the Throne last year, as well as Double Down in 2022. But this is his first open bracket major in the States in a long while. Although with the Rob Bayo matchup being the way it is, he's very favored against MK Big Boss in round 2 pools, his first set of top 64 is pretty precarious, facing either Spargo, who's rather handedly defeated Lima in the past, or Iken, who defeated Bloom Forever on his own turf in Region 2023. If Bloom Forever makes it past them, though, it sets up an interesting top 32 match between either Ashimo, the best Ryu worldwide, or Lima, in a potential battle for the best Bayonetta. And if Bloom and Lima both lose as seeded, they'll both be a match away from playing the Ditto in losers instead. Next up is Big Chungus, a Steve player from Sweden with a case for best Steve in EU, known for top-8ing Europe's largest event last year at Terra. Sadly, from anecdotal accounts I've heard, Terra did a lot to demotivate him, with the rowdiness of the French crowd during his set with Raflo playing a big part in that. If he pulls out all the stops for this event though, he has a good shot at making waves, with Shuton, Kurama, and MKLeo all dropping sets to notable Steve players in the past year. I think Shuton is the biggest question mark. What's the biggest debuff? Shuton against Steve, or Big Chungus against Olimar, a character famously rare to find in the European meta? Now let's make our way to the Japanese players debuting in North America at Genesis, because goodness, there's a lot of them. The highest seed is Akakiksu, the best hero in Japan, and the torchbearer of the character until the past year, where Beast Mode Paul surpassed him in results. And looky here, Akakiksu and Paul are seeded to face off in Winners Top 128 for the questionable prize of facing Sonics in Winners Top 64. Akakiksu is a great competitor with a playstyle that many NA players won't be familiar with, and he's been practicing with the English menu for a while now, but it remains to be seen how he'll be able to adjust to the many barriers he faces as a Japanese player attending his first NA event. Nonetheless, if the Hirudodo comes to pass, it's likely to be a contender for set of the tournament. Next up is top Japanese Sonic Taikei, an up-and-comer racing into this event with plenty of prior momentum, with top 24 finishes at Umebura 10 and Kulon 9, as well as an event win at C-tier Koshishima FES, where he defeated Yaman Action and Neo. Taikei catches a tough break early, with Cola seeded as his top 122 opponent. As previously mentioned, Taikei has a tough history with Roy, losing his last 2 sets to Japanese Roy Alice and winning only 1 game against him in that time. But Taikei did overcome Yaman Action's Roy at Koshishima, and Cola has also struggled against Sonics in North American events, so the upset isn't entirely out of reach, and should he get it, Taikei is set to face Gluttony in one of Warrior's worst matchups. A golden opportunity if he can just get through the gate that is Cola. Hero, the best browser player in the world, is also making his NA debut at Genesis, though his bracket is something a bit less than a welcome mat. Though he has multiple strong showings last year, Hero's results have been in a bit of a slump, with a missing top 8 at every major he's attended since Kagurabi 10 in May of last year. And projections here have him facing many of Baz's worst matchups. The double Mario gauntlet of Ludo into Kurama, a longtime bracket demon in Shuton, and the threat of MKLeo after that. But as a Bowser main, Hero is no stranger to persevering through tough matchups, so be sure not to count him out. And for the next player, actually, I think I can let Cosmos explain.
Okay. Explain to people why they want him at Genesis. Ready, go.
This is Shirayuki, the best Inkling in the world! If you want to see Inkling at Genesis, get him there!
That was Shirayuki, the best... Yeah, you get the point. Shirayuki isn't the most consistent player in the world, but he's not to be counted out, defeating players like Yaura, Shuton, and Gact in 2023, and making top 32 at both Umebura SP10 and Kulon 9. Inkling is so largely absent from the current meta that I don't really have a strong frame of reference for what Shirayuki's odds are against Skyjay, T, or Apollo Kage. But at NA's last premiere event, we saw underdog Japanese character specialists like Umeki and Kananabe break through staples of the NA competitive scene, so it could be Shirayuki's time to shine. Lastly, I'm going to give my pick for the character I think is most likely to make an unexpectedly incredible performance at this event. With so many potential upsets and emerging threats, who will it be? Well, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. My pick is Yaura. In my Port Priority preview video, I called out Yaura as having one of the best brackets in the event, if he could just beat MVD. Well, he didn't beat MVD, and wound up shut out of top 32 by Kurama. This time, though, the highest ranked Samus in the world has a bracket nearly just as strong arrayed in front of him. Yaura had strong showings against Akola, including a set win during some of his first days at offline events, so I'd favor him against Crepe Soleil and Onin. Although it was a close reverse 3-0, he just defeated Neo at Kulon 9, so I'd favor him versus Shattuck as well, and he's got great odds against both Gluttony and Zomba. The really exciting thing here is that Yaura's strong matchups don't stop there. I'll let guest analyst Zomba take it from here.
Who has Sonic's lost to before? Icy Mist. Who is better than Icy Mist? Yaura. SmashCon, right? Or is that a different time?
Oh, right. No, you're right.
Yeah. So then, by transitive property, since Yaura is better than Icy Mist, you would assume Yaura beats Sonics. And then, who is it? It's either Spargo or Mia. Guess what? Spargo's beating Mia. Who was the only person to beat Spargo at that Kagurabi, where Spargo went through losers?
Yaura.
3-0 Yaura.
Oh, shit.
So, low-key.
Yaura won Genesis.
Am I saying Yaura is favored to win this event? No, not even close. But not that far either. The biggest danger to his bracket I see is if Olimar/PT main and fellow Japanese player Noi gets the upset on Shattuck in round 2 pools, at which point Yaura would be faced with an all-too-familiar death sentence of a matchup in Samus Olimar. But with such an outsized scenario, surely that doesn't come to pass, right? If Shattuck can just beat Noi, Thank you for watching this video. If you've enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, since I've got plans to make a lot more content down the line. I made this video in Google Earth with guidance from this video by Bobby Broccoli. My name is SDG, these chest and sprites are by Nuka and eMuffin, this background is by Abstract Motion, and my ending theme is by Popsky. Happy Genesis weekend, and I'll see you later.